We have these huge intact biosystems here, and we carry a huge responsibility to keep them that way. So the history of this sustainability and living this way that we're moving back to has been in our blood, in our marrow, for at least 20,000 years. The message I send out to everyone is that there's this wonderful opportunity to help us or to join us with maybe lands that you hold, if it's other tribal nations, to join us in this coalition of protecting the land and reclaiming the land back, which then protects us as a people, and it protects these intact biosystems. And I think that we can all link arms and link hearts to do this together. So our job here is to reclaim identity and reclaim passion for life and bring hope and create fulfilling positions that tie us back to the land and back to being stewards, given this place by Creator, to be stewards of this land and of our, fellow man. And as I mentioned, Natui Tupik, Spumi Tupik, Sakami Tupik, Suyi Tupik, all the beings, the ones that fly in the air, the ones that swim in the water, the ones that walk and live in the land. We're understanding that we can be us. We can live and breathe through our ceremonies and our songs. We didn't have a written communication. We didn't have a written history other than our winter counts. But we were at about 60,000 people when the buffalo were at about 60 million. Ini is our word for buffalo. And as the buffalo were systematically annihilated, they experienced the genocide that we as well did. And we were down to 3,800 people after being hit with smallpox and tetanus and just all of these diseases that we had no acquired immunity to. And so like the buffalo, their connection to this land, like the Ini that roamed these hills freely, that they were our entire existence, our homes, our clothing, our everything. The passion that I believe we have in bringing back the Ini is also bringing us back. Like we are getting healthier. Just in a few generations, we've been pushed into this little 1.5 million acres. We are dedicated to protecting, preserving, sustaining it from external forces.
There's just been this resurgence of reconnecting to the land and getting out and gathering our own food again and knowing where our food comes from. This has been us here through millennia. When we talk about healing, how do we, again, collectively work together to promote access? And what does access really look like? So that reciprocal relationship of knowing what we need from Ini in our ceremonies, in our livelihoods as humans, what we actually physically need from them, but also spiritually what they provide for us as far as strength and perseverance. And I think, again, with them missing for so long, we understand that just the way that they work the land, the way that they're built to be part of that cultivation of the land, helps those plants and helps the growth of our flora. However, there's also this really unique relationship that they have with the birds, with the gophers, and all the way down to the insects and the microbes. So again, I think with them not being here, we have yet to see what the landscape is going to look like. But I think by bringing them back and being able to watch and learn from them and know how their selective grazing practices are, what their migration practices are, what their social interactions are, we then begin to fill those gaps of knowledge that we've lost. And I think now with these opportunities and people collectively doing this work, we're creating so many more opportunities for our people to get out on the trails, to get out on the land and just be able to find those sweet berry spots.
At the end of the day, when we've cleared so much trail, or we cleaned up so much knapweed, or we have removed fence for the bison, and worked in our ancestral lands that are no longer on our reservation anymore, really feels good to see that we have a Native crew out there working and doing this work. Really, the goal here is to help conserve our Blackfeet traditional lands, and to also give opportunities for career paths to our youth, and then also introduce them into the outdoors and being able to get some job skills and transferable skills throughout their season, so they can use these skills for the rest of their life. Sometimes we want to take that traditional ecological knowledge and we want to take the science view, but sometimes that combining them together can really make a difference. I know that a lot of those practices from the traditional ecological stance have been in place for millennia, so I know that they are still sustainable today. But once you get out here, it's just so breathtaking, and it's hard to leave, and you want your office to be out here every day to see the mountains and to just feel the presence of our ancestors that were here for millennia. It's literally the last best place. And we have so much wildlife, we have so much water, we have so much plant species, and we have so much biodiversity here on our reservation. But not only that, just like in our whole traditional territories.
It's a circle of life, right? It's thinking of something more than yourself, right? It's being in tune and knowing that balance is so key to your way of life, that you live it, breathe it, and think it, right? So much that you instill it to your child, because you want them to have that same healthy mindset. You want them to be compassionate. You want them to be a relative. You want them to be a good neighbor, right? Knowing confidently that my children will be up here telling these stories, and your children will be seeing the aftermath of your efforts. I envision in 40 years, my youngest, who is 6 years old, doing this work at 37. Right here where I am, doing this work, reading this landscape, put here specifically in this area to steward these lands, to be protectors, to be at the headwaters of the world, so we can continue to have healthy people.
Where Blackfeet lands are is at the intersection of these two massive ecosystems, where the Great Plains collide with the Rocky Mountains. And some of the most rich biological diversity anywhere in North America resides right at that interface, right at that ecotone, that transition between the plains and the mountains. And many of our sacred spaces are here in that landscape. For generations, Blackfeet people have cared for the land and really cultivated that biodiversity as a result of cultural practice over thousands and thousands of years. Close by, we have this peak called Triple Divide, and water, if it falls on one side of the mountain, flows downriver into the Missouri River watershed. If it flows on the west side, it flows out into the Columbia and into the Pacific Ocean. And if water falls on the north side, it flows all the way north into Hudson Bay. So this triple divide is really a continental divide for water. So some of the benefits of the work that we're doing here are really about protecting these lands so that they can continue to provide clean water to millions of downstream water users. Protecting these lands to continue to provide critical wildlife habitat to some of our nation's most endangered species. Provide benefits for really the world in terms of the capturing of carbon from the air. How do we overcome our challenges and the conflict in our world? And I think a lot of those answers come from being connected and relating to the land here, informed by our culture. So Blackfeet Nation is a part of a broader confederacy, the Blackfoot Confederacy, or the Siksikaitsitapi. And Blackfoot Confederacy has these ancient instructions for how to relate and care for not only the reservations that we're confined to now, but we have the original instructions on how to care for the land and water across a huge territory. That territory is incredibly important. It's important to people of all walks of life, and we want to continue to honor those ancient obligations that we have, those ancient teachings that we have, and carry forward those practices to help inform how people can relate to the land. Where we are today, we're really at the heart of many community-based initiatives to protect our lands through the Blackfeet Forest Carbon Credit Project, through the Chief Mountain Initiative, and both of those efforts really dovetail together and bring together many, many different community values.
This area was really abused for a number of years, 30, 40, 50 years. It was, abused and overgrazed. So, well, the units, nobody was renting them in 2020. We started putting the tracks together, and it ended up being 244 tracks, if my number is correct, which added up to over 36,000 acres. And I started doing restoration work here. I started, chasing cattle out that were here illegally, and that's a trespassing violation. There was other horses in here, and so we started building, fencing it. We raised some money through a nonprofit, and we started working on the fence. And today, that's an ongoing project. A total of 36 miles, I think, need to be done. Last year, we got 11 miles completed, and we hope to get some more here finished, get started again before winter, and try to get some more miles of fence done by the border. The forest out here, the plants, all the species here, they're all connected. They have a relationship with each other. With the introduction of the bison back to this area, we hope that will be an increaser. The bison will be an increaser for all the other vegetation, the canopy, the trees, all the forest. And so I'm so happy now that I get to be part of this project to get it restored, and for everybody, not just for me. Everybody's going to benefit from this.
There's just so much that's happening on this land now because of, I believe, foundationally, some of our first work with the National Indian Carbon Coalition, because we learned that we had a stronger voice than maybe we thought we had. So through even our work with the National Indian Carbon Coalition, we became more empowered to have a better voice, a bigger voice, a stronger voice. So that's really what brings me here today, is because of who they sell our carbon credits to, that we were, primaries along with TNC, et cetera, Piikani Lodge, to work with leadership to afford this opportunity to keep our forest plan intact, but also knowing that would bring revenue into the tribe that would then prayerfully go out towards education and reclamation of land and identity. We always have this umbilical cord to home. And although I had job offers, I immediately came home because of that connection, because of that umbilical cord and the passion that we have to bring our tools home, to add to this community voice and this community strength and this community resilience. And I'm also a grandmother of 14 and a mother of 4, and just very honored and humbled to be at this point in my life and my journey, to have been blessed by the leadership of our council and by our community to just get to do good work that makes a difference. We have a lot of future generations coming, Creator willing, and we need to really take care of what we have.
Us as Blackfeet people always want to be able to look at the future and say, I want my children, I want my grandchildren to be able to do the same things I do today. Be able to have the same access we do today. when you have buffalo are a very unique species to where, you know, they just don't, when you put them on the grounds, they don't just sit there and just consume all grasslands. They kind of forage one particular plant per day or something, then the next day it's something else, and the next day it's something else. So that rotation allows the plant species to generally keep growing throughout its life cycle. I mean, I've also learned too that, you know, once you have bison and that, it seems to be like other species of animals actually come back. Since we've actually been introducing the buffalo back into the Buffalo Hills Spirits Ranch, the antelope species have actually started coming back to the reservation. And I mean, well, I've visited with a lot of elders, and they've actually said, you know, we haven't seen these species for a great amount of time, and then all of a sudden the buffalo, you bring them back to the Smith Ranch, and it's like we start seeing them getting closer and closer to the mountain front. I mean, that would be my future, you know, for the Blackfeet people, is to be able to look at that in this duration of time with this project and look how we can tentatively start integrating more conservation projects, more developments, more science studies and such.
This area had a lot of native species, grass species, that we came up here and collected. My mom, as a kid, came up here and collected, you know, and those species are gone. So with the knowledge, you know, that my mom told me stories, her knowledge of this area, I have that in my head that I like to get it there, you know, get it back to that point where people can come up here and walk along the river and pick sweetgrass again, you know, and just be part of the land again, you know. It's like a treasure, you know, for everybody up here. Chief Mountain behind me has always been a huge cultural, you know, symbol, or, you know, to us Blackfeets, and we're connected to it, you know, in many different ways. There's lots of songs about it, you know. We sing songs to the mountain, and, you know, prayers, and my tribal members, they come up here and they pray and they sweat, and it heals. It's a really good feeling, you know, to know that this is my home and this is where my ancestors lived before me in thousands of years. I walked where they walked, you know, and that often cannot be said of people, you know, who are growing up. And I was gone for 20-some years working in other areas, and I came home and I fell back in love with my homeland again. I'm singing the songs of my people again, and it's a great joy just to live here and be part of the land. This is my home. This is my home, and I'm going to take care of it.